From the beginning of time, twins have claimed to possess a powerful bond. One that links them from the womb throughout life and into eternity. This premise is controversial. To believe in the twin connection is to believe in the ability to read minds, to psychically transfer pain, and to be conscious of another person's presence before you've even met. Ever since she can remember, Carrie Kaiser felt there was something missing from her life. As a child, she hated to be alone and constantly looked for companionship. Despite the love of her family, these feelings intensified as she got older.
I always seemed to feel like I was looking for something, but I couldn't figure out what it was I was looking for and didn't know whether or not I would ever find what it was. It was just like a puzzle with a piece missing, and I couldn't find that extra piece.
In 1960, Carrie was adopted as an infant by two loving parents. She was raised along with an adoptive brother in a small town near Burlington, Vermont. At a few points during her childhood, Carrie recalls people mistaking her for someone named Amy. During her college years at the University of Vermont, it began to happen much more frequently. Several times a week, she says, strangers approached her believing she was Amy. One Friday night in September 1985, it happened again. A young man spotted Carrie in a restaurant. He was awe-stricken when she explained that she wasn't Amy. He told her if he had $1 million in his pocket, he'd bet every penny that she was related to Amy Frankowitz. Carrie took down information from the man and decided it was time to pursue her look-alike. It didn't take long to track her down. On Monday morning, Carrie picked up the phone and called Amy.
I asked her if she was adopted, and she said yes. And I said, where were you born? And she said, Burlington. And I said, when's your birthday? And she said, my birthday. And I knew right then that we were twins.
They decided to meet that evening at a parking lot outside Rutland, Vermont. During the 100-mile drive, Carrie wondered what it would be like to meet a blood relative. Would they have similar mannerisms? Would they share the same interests? Would they really look that much alike? The sisters were stunned by what they saw.
I just remember pulling up and looking at me on the sidewalk. I couldn't get out of the car.
And I just closed my eyes and I said, oh my God, this has to be the best gift that anybody could ever give me.
Amy and Carrie felt an immediate connection. Twin sisters, reunited after 25 years of separation. For the first time in their lives, the women felt content. Amy, like Carrie, had also grown up feeling like something was missing. Career, marriage, children, nothing filled the gap until she met Carrie.
And I knew it was my sister because that void was better when I met her. You know, it was perfect then.
It's the oddest feeling not to know a person at all. You have never seen them before in your life, and then be face to face with them and have them not only look just about exactly like you, but to instantly love them.
Carrie and Amy discovered they have many similarities. They have the same taste in clothes and jewelry, smoke the same brand of cigarettes, use the same expressions, and share the same mannerisms. Similarities that could be explained by cultural influences. The twins also discovered they can read each other's minds, a phenomenon not so easily dismissed.
It's like carrying on a conversation inside my own head. It's like an extension of myself. Amy is like part of me. I know what she's thinking.
How could two people who are unaware of each other's existence come together after 25 years and find they have so many things in common? The reunion has taken away their mysterious longings.
And that nagging feeling that something was missing from my life was gone and just completely disappeared when I put my arms around my sister.
In the company of her twin sister, it might appear that Carrie has found her soulmate, and along with it, the piece of the puzzle she had been searching for all her life. Are twins essentially two halves of a whole, so intrinsically linked they feel incomplete without one another? Dr. Lewis Keith is an OB/GYN who specializes in twin pregnancies. He and his twin brother Donald founded the Center for Multiple Births. There is very little doubt in their minds that what Carrie and Amy were missing was each other.
The bond between twins is stronger than the bond between mother and child and husband and wife. I know that in my brother and my case, it is extremely strong. I'm not incomplete when my brother walks out of the room or when he goes home, but I would feel very incomplete if he died and I knew I'd never see him or talk to him again. And that's why I think some of the twins who are brought together later in life are so overjoyed. They feel something that was lacking all their life.
Is the bond itself proof of the connection? Can it help to explain the similarities? In part, it can. Dr. Leventhal points out that people tend to look for parallels between their lives and the lives of people they admire. Is it possible this apparent phenomenon can be explained by genetic programming? As fraternal twins, Carrie and Amy share about 50% of their genes. Although geneticists say we still have a long way to go before we fully understand the extent to which DNA determines who we are, it clearly does determine how the human brain develops.
I think you can't exclude the possibility that they might have similar thought patterns based on similar brain structures which are caused by them having the same DNA in large part.
In other words, Carrie and Amy may not be reading each other's minds so much as they are genetically predetermined to think the same way. That, too, might explain why both of them say they grew up feeling a great sense of longing.
Part of the beauty of being humans is that we're always longing for one thing or another anyway, and reaching for fulfillment of those longings is really one of the most satisfying parts of our lives.
Dr. Leventhal is convinced that the feelings of incompleteness Carrie and Amy say they felt had nothing to do with the fact that they were long-separated twins. He says there are too many logical or scientific ways to explain their feelings and similarities, to settle for ones that are mystical or paranormal.
We now return to the unexplained.
Most twins believe they are essentially two halves that together make a whole. If one twin experiences devastating trauma, is it possible the other twin can feel the very same pain? One man is convinced he experienced his twin brother's brutal murder. When Rick and Ron Lemon were born in March 1955, doctors had to perform an emergency cesarean section. It seemed they did not want to separate to come out of the womb. The twin boys clutched one another, their arms and legs intertwined. It was a bond that only grew deeper over time. The brothers were best friends. They had a special connection, one that goes beyond that of ordinary brothers and sisters.
They were always together, and they would hold hands and hold on to one another. They would do everything together.
Rick and Ron are fraternal twins, a result of two separate eggs fertilized by different sperm. The brothers learned to walk and talk at the same time. They enjoyed the same activities, studied the same subjects. Later, they would discover they knew each other's thoughts.
All I had to do was look at Ron, and I would know what he was thinking, and it was vice versa.
When Rick's plane took off from Houston Intercontinental Airport in January of 1995, it was the first time the brothers were to be separated for any length of time. As an accountant for a large oil company, Rick was headed to Africa to lead his first international audit in Angola, a country enmeshed in civil war. Rick was deeply unsettled, concerned for his personal safety, worried he may never see his wife, his young son, or his twin brother again. As it turned out, the first several months in Angola were uneventful. Then, on May 31st, Rick awoke at 4 a.m. with a sharp pain in his stomach.
I was jolted completely out of a deep sleep. It was the most excruciating pain I've ever had. I grabbed my abdominal area because it hit me right there, and I was just rolled up into a fetal position and just laying there going, oh.
Rick says he was paralyzed by the pain. It radiated up his spine to his head, out to his fingers, and down to his toes. After 4 agonizing hours, the pain finally went away. Later that day, doctors ran a battery of tests to determine the cause of Rick's terrifying attack, but they were unable to find any evidence of a dangerous condition. The worst news was yet to come. That night, Rick called his boss in Houston to check in. Immediately, he detected tremendous anxiety in his voice.
I said, you know, what's going on? And he told me, he goes, you haven't heard? And
his twin brother Ron had been murdered the night before.
it's one of the few times I've just screamed in horror. And that's how I found out about my twin's death.
I had been praying all along for Rick's safety, pretty hard. I wish I'd been praying more for Ron's safety here in Houston, Texas.
Ron had been at home Memorial Day evening watching the Rockets game on television when a young man came to the front gate. Ron let him in. The man beat Ron with an aluminum baseball bat. The autopsy report and the 911 recording revealed that Ron had died at 10:30 p.m. Central Time, the very same time Rick says he awoke with the pain in his stomach. The neighbor's call to 911 establishes the approximate time of the brutal killing.
Hello? Yes, ma'am. You need the police? There was a murder next door to my house.
And it's not like, boom, I suffered this excruciating pain and, oh my God, my twin brother is being beat to death with a baseball bat. No, it did not happen like that. And, but I know now.
Rick believes he felt the pain of his brother's death at the exact time of his murder. It was an agonizing pain that will be with him for the rest of his life. He says he is now emotionally amputated, incomplete without his other half. Those closest to Rick say he would never lie about something so tragic.
I truly believe that the pain that Rick experienced was a true connection with what Ron was experiencing during his beating.
Since Ron's death, Rick has suffered headaches, loss of sleep, and an inability to concentrate. As the surviving twin, he may always be destined to suffer physical and emotional pain. For he will always be, to himself as well as to his family, not only a living reminder of Ron, but a guilty survivor.
I would call up my own father, my mother, my little brother, and each time that I would call them up, they'd start crying because I sounded exactly like Ron. And to have a whole family that can't even talk to you because they're always crying, hurts that person very badly.
Is it possible the twin bond was so powerful that Rick was able to experience his brother's death? It should come as no surprise that the most avid believers are twins who claim to have had similar experiences themselves. Raymond Brandt has dedicated his life to the study of twins. He lost his twin in a work-related accident nearly 50 years ago. Brandt says he's heard hundreds of stories like Rick's and believes twins possess a form of supernatural communication.
It's not because I want to believe it because I'm a twin, but it's because I've come to have to believe it because it ties in so perfectly with the puzzle of the total twins world. No doubt in my mind that there is a phenomena, scientific or quasi-scientific, that is in the model of one twin sensing the other twin's pain.
To Brandt, It's logical that because twins spend time together in the womb, somehow they share a connection throughout life.
I think it's something that not only is the injured twin sending a signal to his twin, but I think it's also largely the uninjured twin being a receptor, being open, and always being fine-tuned to wondering, what is my twin doing? I wonder how my twin is.
James Alcock, who teaches a college course examining paranormal claims, finds the premise absurd.
If you look at the last 100 years of research, there's not a single bit of evidence that demonstrates clearly that ESP exists. There are claims made that it exists, but there's not one repeatable experiment that shows it.
Might something else have taken place to account for the timing? Dr. Bennett Leventhal, head of the psychiatry department at University of Chicago, argues that Rick either adjusted the timeline to make the events fit, or that they were nothing more than coincidental.
It is quite conceivable that Rick had an enormously powerful pain at a particular point in time, and that he had that pain at exactly the same time his brother was being killed, and that for Rick, that became a meaningful relationship between the death of his brother and him.
Doctors who study the mind say people frequently attach meaning to otherwise meaningless events. It's human nature to seek significant connections. That might be especially true for someone like Rick, who had such a close relationship with his brother.
All sorts of things, once you know that your brother has died, can be now interpreted as a sign that you were out of sorts that particular day. And on any given day, if you look at people in general, you find that people will find something throughout the day that they can relate if something goes bad.
If Rick's car had gone off the road and into a ditch, if he had picked up the telephone receiver only to find a dead line, it follows that Rick could have interpreted events like these as a link between himself and his brother's death. It might be argued that he needed to find a link to help him express his grief.
The fact is, for Rick, he shared pain with his brother. It's a meaningful, psychological, intellectual, and emotional experience for him. But from a physiologic, anatomic, biological point of view, Rick's pain and the pain from his brother were not one and the same. There was no real connection. That was just a coincidence.
Things like this, I know are possible because I experienced it. If a person doesn't experience it, it's just kind of like having faith in God. It's there, it does happen, and sooner or later we will all find out.
According to Rick and the testimony of twins throughout history, the phenomenon is very real. Twins can't help but share the same pain, the same emotion, the same thoughts. For Rick, experiencing pain at the exact moment of Ron's death is more than enough proof of his eternal connection to his brother. Raised worlds apart, one as a Jew, the other as a Nazi sympathizer, learn they share much in common despite their extreme differences. As a 9-year-old boy living on a Caribbean island in 1942, Jack Yuffie lived in constant fear of a German invasion. Trinidad was considered strategically important for the Allied war effort. Large quantities of aluminum and bauxite moved in and out of the island's main port. Jack's father, fearing the war might spill into the region, decided it was time to share his news.
My dad, all of a sudden, out of a clear blue sky, told me, "Did you know you have a brother?" And I hadn't known, of course. He just, out of a clear blue sky, told me that, a twin. I said, "Where is he?" He said, "He's in Europe, in Germany."
Jack was certain it would be dangerous if anyone in the British protectorate of Trinidad knew he had relatives in Germany. Throughout the war, he kept it a secret, while begging his father for more information. His father, a Romanian-born Jew, had come to Trinidad to escape the Nazi regime. En route, he had met Jack's mother, a German Catholic, vacationing in the Caribbean. 6 months after the twins were born in 1933, they separated. Oscar went with his mother to Germany, where he was raised by his grandmother, a devout Catholic. Jack stayed with his father in Trinidad and was raised in the Jewish religion. As a teenager, Jack moved to Israel, where he lived on a kibbutz and served in the Navy. In 1954, finally independent and still curious about his twin brother, he took a train to Germany to meet Oscar. The reunion was a fiasco. Upon arrival, a translator warned Jack not to mention his Jewish roots. Oscar was a Nazi sympathizer. During his childhood, he had been a member of the Hitler Youth. Horrified, the twin brothers discovered they were enemies. Jack left Germany discouraged and stopped all contact with Oscar. It took 25 years before he had a change of heart.
It's not normal to live apart from your identical twin. It's not normal. It's not a normal situation. One has to know your brother. One has to speak to him, to see him, to hold him, to hug, to enjoy life together.
In 1979, Jack, now living in the United States, read about a University of Minnesota study focusing on twins. The university agreed to arrange a reunion. The brothers were to meet on a November day in the Minneapolis airport. They had no trouble spotting each other at the gate. They were identical, down to the mustache, the glasses, and even the blue military-style shirt.
I said to Oscar, the glasses, I said the same. The Zelba, I said to him, same. The shirt, same shirt. I said, why? Why you have this shirt? And he said, why you have this shirt? It was uncanny, some of the things that were happening.
Because Jack and Oscar were moral enemies, divided by a world war, they promised never to even discuss religion and politics. The great powers of the world, they figured, have never been able to solve such differences, and neither would they. The twins were surprised to find they had so many things in common. Both read magazines from back to front, flushed the toilet before and after use, and store rubber bands around their wrists. They also have the same internal clock and quirky sense of humor. Over the years, the twins kept in touch, taking vacations together, visiting each other at their homes, and meeting family members. On March 17, 1997, Oscar died of cancer. Jack did not attend the funeral.
It was too difficult. It would be too difficult for me. It would be too difficult for his wife and his children to see someone that looks just like their father, who is lying there in a box, and I'm walking around there.
Jack is moving on with his life. He and his second wife own a clothing and appliance store near the Mexican border outside of San Diego. Tragically, while many similarities did survive the years of separation, Jack and Oscar's twin connection lacks the intimate relationship so evident in other twins.
We really did try, and it was very difficult for us. And still, I don't think we ever wound up really getting to like each other or love each other. And I thought that if we had spent much more time together, I was wondering whether we would have become close friends or bitter enemies. That is my question.
The question remains, are the preferences and habits that Jack and Oscar evidence an irreversible twin bond? After all, despite 46 years of separation and a world war that pitted them against one another, they have eerie similarities. Dr. Lewis Keith is not the least bit surprised that Jack and Oscar have so much in common.
There must be a great deal of genetic control of our behavior, our mannerisms, our voice patterns, our speech, how we cross and uncross our fingers and legs, that we are just beginning to investigate and understand. I'm not surprised either, because we have heard so many stories that are similar to this.
In fact, Jack and Oscar are identical or monozygotic twins, originating from the same egg, which divides in two shortly after conception. This means, unlike fraternal twins, who share only half their DNA, Jack and Oscar have virtually identical DNA. In the past, scientists thought babies entered the world as blank slates whose personalities were determined by environmental factors. Today, doctors believe much of who we are is dictated by our DNA.
I think the pendulum is swinging back a little bit to believing that people probably are born with innate personalities and come into that environment with biologically determined personality traits, which can be pushed a little more in one direction or the other, or things can be brought out or suppressed.
Research has shown that genes may determine everything from the way we look and feel to our preferences in food and clothes.
It would be hard to imagine that there could be a gene that would cause someone to put a rubber band around their wrist. Genes just don't operate in such a very specific fashion to determine one small action. But there are no doubt genes that determine color preference, that determine taste preference, and someday we'll know how that all works.
Is it a genetic preference that when Jack and Oscar see each other for the first time in decades and they're dressed in matching blue military shirts, it's more likely DNA at work than a supernatural occurrence? James Alcock says there may be another explanation as well.
I guess the first question is that documented, or is that something that they remembered later? Because one thing we know about human memory is that it's very, very easily distorted when we're looking for meaning, when we're looking for patterns.
As Alcock explains it, people's brains are designed to find patterns. Humans discover patterns more efficiently than even computers. As a result, we tend to ignore differences and focus on similarities, even if they're not meaningful ones. Furthermore, he points out, we cannot ignore the context in which Jack and Oscar were brought together. The brothers were reunited as part of a study seeking to analyze similarities between twins. In other words, they were looking for anything and everything they had in common.
So if we see two strangers who are each wearing the same shirt, we say, just a coincidence. We see two identical twins who haven't seen each other for a long time, they're wearing the same shirt, we say, wow, that's meaningful. How do you explain that?
Skeptics say Jack and Oscar's story illustrates nothing more than everyday coincidences and ordinary human interactions. Perhaps those who believe it is something more are allowing their judgment to be influenced by the drama of twins torn apart by divorce, by war, and by destiny. This accident of nature fuses two human beings together. Can two women who are joined at the head learn to lead separate lives? When Laurie and Dory Chappelle were born in 1963 at a Philadelphia hospital, the corridors were buzzing with the news. The identical twins were attached at the head. It was the first such birth the hospital had ever seen. Mr. and Mrs. Chappelle were forced to make a difficult choice. They could allow their daughters to remain attached, or surgeons could try to separate them. The Chappelles believed the twins were the work of God, and it was too risky to separate them. Laurie and Dory say they have never once regretted their parents' decision.
Absolutely not.
No.
No.
No, this doesn't bother us. We were born this way, we grew up this way, you sort of
accept it.
Right, you don't go, I wish, or what ifs, because you're just wasting your life doing all that.
Doctors warned the family to prepare for the multitude of social and medical challenges that would follow. Laurie and Dory were referred to as the Siamese twins, named after the world's most famous conjoined twins, Chang and Eng, from Siam. Like Chang and Eng, Laurie and Dory are a medical mystery because conjoined twins rarely live past childhood and a large percentage are stillborn. Although Dory was born with spina bifida, both sisters are surprisingly healthy. Laurie and Dory are now 35 years old, and if there is one thing they'd like people to understand about them, it is that they are individuals. Two people who happen to be conjoined at the forehead. Laurie and Dory share bone, blood, and tissue, but insist they share very little in common. They have separate bank accounts and completely different interests. Laurie confides she'd like to marry and have children. Dory is an aspiring country western singer. Although they have spent every moment of their lives together through grade school, junior high, and high school, And now as they pursue careers, Lori and Dory have managed not only to accept and support one another, but to lead independent lives. Their secret, they say, is compromise.
I was going to say the same secret that everyone else in life should have: compromise. Only we
have to do it harder because of the condition.
Right. There are times that I'd want to do something and she doesn't want to do it at the time and stuff, but we compromise.
If you can compromise through this, you can compromise through any relationship.
In many ways, Lori and Dory make an effort to differentiate themselves from one another. Perhaps that is a survival skill they have learned. Clearly, the sisters know each other very well, but they emphasize they don't have the same dreams, feel the same emotions, or think the same thoughts. And regardless of how often they try to explain it, Lori and Dory know people don't see them as they see themselves.
That's one thing about life that's probably going to go on and on and on. But I think if more people would listen instead of just like half hear.
Or if more people would think before opening their yap,
right,
so to speak.
We're two individuals, and I would love for people to start realizing that. I mean, stop looking at the
condition and start looking at the bodies.
Right, the two human beings that form these two bodies.
Doctors say, barring any unforeseen medical problems, Lori and Dory should live long and healthy lives and enjoy all the activities the rest of us do.
Well, we don't put on our shirts sometimes the same way as you all do, but everyone has something that's hard for them. So, and we're just another two people in this human race. We just happen to be together.
In all of human existence, relatively few people have experienced what Lori and Dory have, going through life as two people, but also as one. What does it mean for two individuals to be attached at the head? Like a blind person with a heightened sense of hearing, might they possess abilities the rest of us don't have? Lori and Dory are truly unique. Conjoined twins are identical twins, the result of an incomplete cell division in the womb. Fewer than 20 sets are born each year in the United States. Of those, only 1% are joined at the head, and most of them will not survive congenital abnormalities. Dr. James O'Neill, an expert on conjoined twins, has studied Lori and Dory for more than 20 years. One of the most interesting things about their condition is that their two brains merge.
We know a fair amount about the nature of the junction of their brains and how much is shared, and we know that there are not two complete brains there.
Surely it would stand to reason if any two people are capable of communicating telepathically, Lori and Dory must be. They are, in effect, a test of the twin connection. Not only do they share a portion of their brain, they are genetic clones. Lori and Dory say they've never had the ability to read each other's minds, and firmly declare they have their own opinions, their own likes and dislikes. Science is there to back them up.
The brain is compartmentalized in function. One part does the thinking, another part does the smelling, another part does the seeing. So just because some of the electrical circuits are attached, it doesn't necessarily mean that the thinking process or the feeling process or things that make us human are attached.
Even if Lori and Dory's example does contradict the existence of a twin connection, their experience affirms the ability of the human mind and body to cope.
Somehow human beings and their desire for survival rise to the occasion and do better. And I think that this is a prime example of how two individuals who truly love one another have been able to compensate for all of the many things that anybody might imagine and have been able to make it in this world. Ultrasound can detect conjoined twins in the first trimester of pregnancy.
Doctors say they can predict with relative accuracy whether or not separation surgery is viable. At the time of Lori and Dory's birth, the technology was not available. Even if it had been, experts say it would be impossible to separate them because of the way their brains are connected. Today, parents of conjoined twins usually opt for the surgery.
There's something about conjoined twins that has fascinated everyone, lay people, physicians, everybody. There's just something amazing about having two individuals joined together. And a lot of mystical ideas have developed as a result.
Lori and Dory offer a unique perspective to humankind. Their existence is one the rest of us will never be able to fathom. It's not just the physical appearance that catches our fascination, but the mysteries we can't see, like the psychological burden of two people destined to remain physically connected for life. At a friend's urging, David asked his mother to music or their parents' voices. Unborn twins respond to one another. It's an awareness, many believe, that twins bring with them into the world. A plastic surgeon in Chicago, Dr. David Teplica, has studied thousands of sets of twins, not with a stethoscope or any kind of medical instrument, but through the lens of his camera. Time and again, he has observed the undeniable bond, while his portraits have documented the extraordinary similarities. Matching patterns of freckles, wrinkles, graying hair, David's portraits stand as a testament to his lifelong fascination with twins.
As long as I can remember, I've been fascinated by the twin issue and recall reading as a 7 or 8-year-old voraciously about everything I could find about twins.
At a friend's urging, David asked his mother if she had any idea why he was fascinated by twins. She told her son that doctors had been convinced she was carrying twins when she was pregnant with David. In the 4th month, she experienced cramping and bleeding. And when the time came, she delivered not 2 babies, but 1.
Apparently, Mom had every indication or every reason to think that she would be delivering twins. Her doctor felt that she would. But because ultrasound was not available during her pregnancy in 1958, 59, there's no way to know for sure.
Was David aware on a subconscious level of a twin who accompanied him the first 4 months in the womb? It sounds highly irrational, and David himself dismisses the possibility. Dr. Raymond Brandt, editor of Twins World, says it happens all the time.
I know certainly now from interview with hundreds of twins that there is, from uteral birth, from uteral development, a unique bonding phenomena that occurs between twins, and they always know they're a twin even though one of them is stillborn and even though one of them is kept from the other twin's awareness.
If we assume that twins are accurately and truthfully representing their experiences, experts debate only the interpretations. Few deny the psychological bond that exists between twins. All acknowledge the potency of genetics in determining an individual's characteristics. Believers contend it's something more, and that it begins at the earliest moments of life. Ultrasounds have captured twins interacting with each other, hugging, biting, touching. This, they say, forms the basis for the closest of all human relationships. The dramatic stories twins tell only serve to demonstrate just how profound the bond is and how much is still unexplained. Critics say the remarkable stories of twin connections can be understood without resorting to paranormal explanations. The first rational cause is coincidence. Skeptics note that coincidences take place all the time. Usually they go undiscovered or unrecognized. 2 people who attended the first grade together in Phoenix unknowingly pass each other on a street corner in a city across the country. When they are recognized, they are often shrugged off. 2 people show up at the same location wearing the very same outfit. Every now and then, however, we decide to attach significance to a coincidence. Rick experienced a severe pain at the exact moment as his brother's murder. Rather than recognize it as a statistical possibility, we frequently jump to conclusions. It must have occurred because they are twins.
People have come to me numerous times, more than I can count, and told me similar stories of death or serious injury to their twin, and they felt and shared the circumstance. And their parents or grandparents are there and corroborate the stories. Why this happens, I don't think anybody can give you a rational explanation. The twins are telling you the truth.
You have here a phenomenon. You want to explain it. And either you do it seriously by looking at all the possible explanations, or you just choke off inquiry and say, it's mystical, it's supernatural.
Much of the so-called twin connection can be explained by understanding how we communicate. Humans transmit subtle cues through voice inflection, touch, or movement of muscles. To an extent, we are also able to predict behavior.
I have a son away at college. I know when he's going to call me. I know he's going to call me at the end of the month when the bank account is low. I know he's going to call me in the evening when he's not going out. It's never going to be a Friday or Saturday because he's out.
The rest of the similarities are probably determined by genetics. Since 1979, researchers at the University of Minnesota have been studying twins who were separated at birth. It's a rare opportunity to answer scientific questions about the influence of genetics versus environment. The results are striking. In terms of IQ, motor skills, personality, leisure, and occupational interests, identical twins who had never met were more alike than fraternal twins raised in the same home by the same parents.
I don't believe that genetics determines everything about one's personality. Certainly, the expression of the personality and choices people make in their life are determined by the opportunities they have, which might not be the same for identical twins. Identical twins placed in different classrooms and who have different teachers and different classmates are going to have different experiences.
Twins, from the moment of conception, began to in utero bond with each other. Must be that at that time there's some kind of a translation of what we like to think of as a wireless messenger that forever connects these two persons in that womb, no matter where they may be and under what circumstances they may find themselves.